Welcome to our Saturday update where we go into the bigger time frame. So we're mainly going to be looking at daily and weekly charts for the most part. We're going to look at a few other stocks, and then we're also going to obviously look at the beginning of the video, the SPY and the Qs. On the chart right now, you can see that we have the monthly expected moves up there. So we're going to give those out. We have weekly expected moves and daily expected moves for next week. But if you would like to subscribe after this video, if you find something helpful and you want to subscribe, tomorrow we will be going into those shorter timeframes to see what is very, very likely for the week ahead. But in this video, we're going to tackle those bigger timeframes as the daily and weekly need some love. So let's get into it. And just so you guys know, we will be going over like SPY, Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, Nvidia, AMD, Meta, Microsoft, Google, AMC, GME. We're going to go all the way to DJT today. So if you like AMC, GME, and DJT has some very, very interesting signals, I just wanted to put this little blip in there to let you guys know, hey, we're looking at a bunch of those individual stocks if you wanted to stick with us for a bit today. But first, we're going to touch on something like the dollar, okay? There's a couple things with the dollar here. We actually had it marked off already because we posted these things to Patreon last week. So if you'd like to join Patreon, the link is down in the description. We're going to give out all the weekly expected moves tomorrow on Patreon. We already have all the monthly expected moves for all the stocks that we cover over here on the right side of the screen. We're going to go through a lot of those on the daily and weekly time frame, at least daily. So stick around with us for a bit. You'll notice one thing here. This is in negative territory, so we might still be in that time where we need to see a higher low before we actually see some kind of real stock market crash. But what were we talking about as far as the dollar goes? Well, in 2025, I know we did have a hiccup, but we did see a drawdown, but we ended up doing what? We've reached all-time highs, and we've really seen a push for new all-time highs every single month for the last, like, what, six months or something like that, maybe 5. And so what we really want to watch here is as this really started to come down in January of 2025, the dollar has been heading down while the stock market is doing what right now? It is making new all-time highs. That makes total sense, actually. That makes a lot of sense because if people are going out of the dollar, then they might be going what? Into stocks. And then we need to see a time where that is going to change. Because when that does change, people might sell those stocks for cash, aka the dollar, and then the stock market may fall. And you'll start to notice that we do have those divergences here on the daily time frame. We have those divergences also on your MACD and RSI at the same time. So this is really, really showing at the bottom of a somewhat of a channel that the dollar could get a bounce here, and that really in a bounce that actually changes the trend for a period of time. And so what that tells us is there may be a period of time here where we start to see the dollar go up, and we'll have to pay attention if the stock market's going up at the same time, right? That's how we found those traps. If you've been here for a year or two, we've gone through a lot of these traps before, but I wanted to point this out for the dollar. Something else that is kind of coinciding with this and kind of agreeing with this is gold. So I'm going to look at GLD. Gold looks like it needs to do what? It needs a daily back off. And if you look at these type of levels for GLD, you are outside of some critical levels. You set up some reversal signals. So it does look like the dollar, that gold is going to pull back in some way, at least for a retest of the 20. And so this would add into the validity of the dollar could see a period of time, maybe just a daily trend move to the upside. We'll have to see how long it lasts, but GLD is actually saying, hey, I might be getting cooked up here. I might need to back off for a bit of time, even if it's just for a few weeks. And so the dollar is saying a similar thing at the same time. Gold is saying it wants to pull down. The dollar is saying it kind of wants to see a move up. And now we have to see if that comes to fruition, because that means that market conditions overall are changing. That's what that overall does mean, because as you can see in January of 2025, gold has been going up, and what has the market done? The market has made new all-time highs. But now you'll notice that if this would change and gold starts to come down, what does that mean for the stock market at all-time highs? Is that going to be a correlated reaction and end up turning to the downside? I wanted to just preface some of that because we talked about it, or at least posted it to Patreon this week. Now, this all tied in with what? Volatility, right? The volatility signals that we've been discussing. We noticed that the volatility index, the VIX, does have a major amount of divergence, and that recently went positive. So that's really why we've been talking about it. And if you see the market keeps it going and making new all-time highs, that means that volatility should be down towards what? 1212, right? There's no risk. 1212 is a very, very bullish place where you can sit for periods of time, right? We can sit there for long periods of time to get some more bull run going. We didn't experience that. We've made higher lows. So as we have made higher lows, that means someone knows something that you potentially don't, or they at least see that there is big risk in the market and they are either hedging or taking off those call positions. And a lot of the time you would lean towards, hey, this getting positive here is going to lead to a weekly curl up. And that weekly curl up is what? Is this going to be a stock market crash? What volatility is saying is it can be, right? It's a moment where you want to be a little bit cautious, but it is more likely to just come up, maybe come up to a point of about 36.11, and then we're going to see that subside. And I actually believe later on, maybe as we make a divergence or something like that going into 2026, we'll see. We don't want to read too much into the future, right? We're not fortune tellers. All we know is there's a major daily divergence here on the MACD. There's a major daily divergence here on the RSI that is telling us that volatility is going to turn up for the weekly. Now, we've talked about this for a long time. We've had to react to times where it potentially failed and made another divergence point. But the difference between then over here and now being over here is you're starting to see this round out, right? We're not going down, down, down and continuing. We are seeing a time where it is shifting. So you have the shift from gold that is potential, hasn't happened yet. You have the shift from the dollar that has overall confirmed those signals, but hasn't fully happened yet. And then you have this shifting up from volatility while everyone thinks things are dandy. So this leads into a recipe for disaster, actually, because of a couple of things. One thing I do want to point out is you can get those monthly expected moves. Please pause the video and get those levels. You can read the number on the right side of the chart here, 690.53 right over here. But the weekly expected moves, and especially even the daily expected moves, I'm not going to read them off, but just look how tight those daily expected moves are on this daily chart. Once you start to get into these times where it seems like the market can't go down, it refuses to go down, it refuses to go down, and you start to see volatility doing that thing where it just creeps up gently while people are just like, oh no, it refuses to go down. You run into times where seriously people can get taken off guard. And how do we display that on this channel? Well, I want you to look at the daily expected moves for Monday and tell me that people are thinking, oh, this is perfect. Like pretty much people are thinking, there's nothing expected, right? There's no movement according to the options data expected for Monday. And that opens the door to something bad happening. Now, it doesn't mean it has to happen. It actually is lower percentage to happen. It's more likely to see nothing. But as I displayed in the beginning of this video, volatility especially, and the dollar wanting to turn around and change the game here, and VIX really showing, hey, now we're making those higher lows. You have to be very aware that something unexpected could come at any time. Now, that could be unexpectedly bullish, but it can especially be unexpectedly bearish as you look at the SPY signals, as well as we take into consideration the correlations that we talked about, and we take into consideration VIX. But let's just look at the SPY now. Now, the SPY, we were discussing over here, we're going to talk about the cues, why we were aware of a trap number 3. And I do believe trap number 3 has potentially finished forming by the weekend. We talked about that. We did say that this could make another point of divergence. We use the cues for that. We'll go over that in a moment. But mainly, you just got to see, are these divergences at the same time as volatility? Yes. Are the divergences on both the MACD and RSI? Well, yes, you see them on the MACD. We even see that the SPY says it could go through more weakness because it's even holding in the near term and the longer medium term on the RSI. So you have a mixture, a recipe for like, hey, if we see a little bit of momentum down, like a decent amount, like you confidently lose the 20, you could be getting a weekly pullback. Now, we're going to talk about weekly pullbacks and discuss a little bit of these monthly expected moves, because I think a weekly pullback could just take you down to about right in here towards 630. But I am open to us going down not only to the 20, but also to the weekly 50. I think that that would be very possible as well with the run that we have overall had. So I believe that we could see this tested or this little box area in here tested by the end of the year. That's what I really, really think. So this is what we have to be aware of. The weekly is way, way up there. Yes, the weekly can keep going, but overall, as you start to get to these readings of 20, the highest reading we've seen on the MACD, you start to look for opportunities like this, where you pull back for a few weeks. You start to look for this 4-week pullback. You start to look for this 4-week pullback. You start to look for this 4-week pullback. We have seen this big run. Look how we had a big run back here. Look for the 4-week pullback and then see the next move higher. If we're going to get something a little more dramatic, then we will be looking for potential daily divergences to form going into, say, December. So we'll be watching this very carefully. If you really wanted the very simple analysis for, say, a swing trader on the weekly time frame, it would be, hey, the weekly pulls back down to the 20. You see that weekly cross down in positive territory. We're then able to curl back up, and you would say, okay, now it's time to go again, and that is where we can make new highs. I do not think the market will be crashing now. I think it will be later, and I think that if we go through something a little vigorous now into December, and then we're able to go higher, I think this is more the timeline in 2026, maybe towards March, where we actually do see what? We start to see the weekly divergences that cause bad things. I don't want you to ignore the fact that we're still talking about this potentially happening. And do we see that right now? No. So we should be looking for continuation until we see those divergences. And those divergences usually end up telling you a good hint for, uh-oh, there's big risk ahead. So this is just overall to display all the things in the market that seem to be changing. It is to display the reversal signals from volatility suggesting a weekly pullback is coming. And then it's to match those up with the SPY at the same time and to give you some critical levels like the monthly expected move to see where you could see a potential first daily bounce from. And the lower side of that move for the month of October is 641.83. And I hope that this portion was helpful. Let's go check out the Qs. Now, the levels for the Qs are on there. If you want to pause the video, get them all. I know they're kind of jumbled together, but you know the yellow is the monthly, the purple is the weekly, the red is the daily for Monday, if you would like that. Now, something that we were discussing a little bit here was just the weekly pullback. Now, why were the Qs very good to watch, right? We went pretty in-depth in the SPY, but what was the main thing about the Qs that really told us, hey, we might want to watch for something here? It was this point right here. So when we violated on the RSI, we said, uh-oh, we might need to look for a trap number 3. If you recall, we were looking for trap number 2. Trap number 2 took place, but then we said, hey, the signals here aren't adding up, and we'll show that off in tomorrow's video, so make sure you subscribe. But this overall tells us what? This tells us that, hey, the Q signals here weren't full reversal signals, not the reversal signals we see at most in a high majority of tops. We don't see them. We have actually violated them, which means we're probably going to see another push. So watch out for trap number 3. Now look how trap number 3 is here. And what do you have on the RSI? You actually have a divergence point that just confirmed with the signal line. You would like to see the price action for the daily time frame take you below and close below the 9. But once again, small ranges, right? Our 68% zones are very small. So something unexpected now makes sense. So something we need to watch for are a couple of things on the daily time frame. And the Qs are very good because they have space here, which tells you what? If we're going to fall down, then we should not see the daily be able to curl up into positive territory again. If we get some kind of pullback that then curls back up into positive territory, what's going to happen? We're going to test the high, go make a new one. So if you really want this to be a downturn, then you do not want this MACD curling up in positive territory again. You want this divergence in the near price action to play out. You want these divergences across to play out on the MACD. And you do have volatility in the dollar who are kind of backing that this is a moment of weakness for the market. As far as it stands, though, that is what I would really be watching for the Qs. This will kind of be your hint for like, hey, are we going to go through a major time of disruption and then turn around towards, the end of November? Or are we just going to get a daily pullback that ends up curling up into the end of the year? And that could be easily displayed here from the MACD on the Qs. And we will continue to update you on those shorter time frames so that we can get hints, around those weekly moves and stuff like that. We can get hints and on those shorter time frames to tell us where the next high probable move will go. So make sure you're subscribed for Sunday's video where we'll go into those shorter time frames. But for now, let's go look at some daily and weekly charts for a few individual stocks. I just wanted to show off on like IWM. You have a bunch of wonky divergences on the daily. So they are saying there's weakness in momentum, and you're getting this almost like I believe it's maybe a gravestone doji or just inverted hammer or something like that. It really doesn't look good when you do try to make that new high. You see the selling pressure come in. So we'll see what happens with that for IWM. But I do know some of these small cap stocks have looked very interesting with signals, and we'll get to some of them. DIA as well, just wanted to show off those divergences as well. So you're seeing those divergences trying to violate with that move, but not looking too great. So these aren't the correct moves for DIA, just so you are aware, but I just wanted to show there's daily divergence here as well. So it's not just the SPY and the Qs. The other indices are showing it. I think the other indices are wonky, or I think the SPY is the easiest to read as of right now. We were correct to call out TLT backing off from this area, getting a daily pullback. It does look like TLT might need to pull back a little bit further to go into that 50 before heading higher. But overall, TLT, looking at the daily pulling back to the center, looking for the next move to go higher for TLT. Apple, you're kind of looking for a similar thing. You're looking for the daily pullback. It's not really suggesting that this has to be awful, but the state of the market is going to be a little bit risky. As we look here, there's no divergence here on the RSI, anything like that. Seems we have surged forward with some news, and we'll see if that can continue. Very hard to bet against things like Apple, but this is why it is very good if you're seeing a rapid upward move. That's towards the end of the month. If you're seeing a rapid upward move, anytime though, look for those monthly expected moves, and that's why they're very, very good for the individual stocks. But overall for Apple, you'd be looking and saying, oh, I'm looking for like a daily pullback to get down to that center line maybe. Maybe we can find a quick little example for that. This one was pretty dramatic, but overall, you see that the opportunities by the center line have a better chance to get a little rise in them, right? A little rise in them. And right here by the center line, again, you see a little rise. So this is to keep people from thinking FOMOing in is the best option. As far as Tesla goes, you're looking for the same thing, just a daily pullback. So maybe we need to be paying attention to the Qs and their MACD being far away from the center line, because Tesla's overall saying the same thing. Now, Tesla was one that had major 2-hour divergence. I hope you were able to see it. Fantastic look to it. It's starting to fall down. We can talk about bounces and stuff like that throughout some update videos on Patreon. But overall, you're just looking for a daily pullback. I don't think if the weekly crossed out, yeah, that would be a lower high. That would be very bad. So it's something you watch for. But the more probable thing is we're going to get a daily pullback in the near term for Tesla. Then we have to see how it goes, right? Everything's kind of, you see how the market proves itself and you move along. Something for Amazon that's not a good thing, right? We knew this was bad. We had our 229, our risky level. We broke through, which was great, but we gave it right back up and we confirmed the divergence. And that's a problem. Now you have divergence here. Now you have a weekly lower high. It's not looking very good. It looks like Amazon is saying, hey, I need to weekly pull back. And if it goes negative, this can be very bad for Amazon. But I think the worst it gets for Amazon is like 192. Come fill this gap down in here. But I do have some other levels if you want to mark them off for some areas for bounces. As of right now, though, it looks like, hey, Amazon's going to weekly pull back. All right, so that's really all you could say about it. If it is going to say, yes, I am a lower high, then you would expect what? Then watch out if that starts to go negative, because you can test this low, go make a new one. As far as NVIDIA goes, you're looking for what? A weekly pullback. You're really looking for a weekly pullback here, and you may even have that divergence in the near term, right? Now, look, you need weekly divergence to really see something bad for a long period of time, right? This is from November of 2024 all the way down into April of 2025. So you really are probably going to make a weekly divergence, which means what? The next really good opportunity for NVIDIA would potentially be, hey, come down to that weekly 50, test these highs that we broke through, right? Just come down to that area and then curl up into positive territory. Just see that curl down, get a nice little curl up, and we probably bought ourselves a good amount of time to make new highs, to break through 200, into potentially 2026. Now, I'd be watching out for what? If you see a divergence form on this weekly, we'll talk about it in the future. Let's talk about the weekly. Does it have a good chance to cross down for NVIDIA? Well, let's look at the daily time frame. As of right now, you would say, hey, I need that daily time frame to, and I actually think we're going to remake these zones in a different video. So I want to mark off this area here so with price action, I think we're more likely to test by that 50 in this area. So I'd mark something like this off and say, hey, if we lose that, it gets risky. But if we remain higher, if we just pull back into this area, we see like daily divergence in this area, I'd be pretty happy with that going into early 2026, just to give you a random note in my head. But overall, are we watching for that? Not necessarily. We're just watching right now in the near term. We're watching for daily divergence to confirm. We have not confirmed the daily divergence by the center line, but look at the positioning of the MACD. It is very close to that center line. So you have to be aware of it, and you have to be aware how high up that weekly chart is. The next real opportunity for NVIDIA will most likely be on a weekly pullback, and this is the daily divergence that you could see before it happens. Doesn't have to happen right now, right? You're curled up. This is bullish, right? This is bullish. And so until you really see that confirm back down, you can't really be bearish on it. You have to say, okay, I got to do my homework in the shorter time frames. That's why we go over them. But if this just grew and grew and grew, you'd have to remake signals so you can extend that floor potentially into earnings or something like that. So overall, you have daily divergence formed, not confirmed, and it looks like NVIDIA needs a weekly pullback, so that can come sooner rather than later. And you should be looking for continuation after that weekly pullback. If NVIDIA is saying weekly pullback, then I would assume that AMD is going to say the same. Okay, now if this is going how it's going, it's overall negative. The positioning is leaning towards what? A lower high. So can we make a lower high right here? Actually, you'd really like to reach up a little higher towards 174 for those sellers, but we'll see what happens here. Overall, I think the weekly chart is better for this one, just to say, hey, a weekly pullback would be great. And also, what level can I pay attention to? Well, if you see, we made this kind of left over here. You see this little action right here, and then we made a new high above that. That's great. So now you're probably looking for a left head and kind of a right shoulder. So I think you're looking for a dip down towards maybe this 50, maybe in this area, maybe towards like 135, 130 would be pretty good. And then you're looking for that to curl back up. That would be a good opportunity. Doesn't have to happen, but I like to talk about opportunities. As far as it stands for the weekly time frame for Meta, Meta is saying this is bad right now. Meta is saying overall, I have held divergence throughout this entire time. Meta is saying I might even vomit on the monthly. I might go through a monthly pullback. So this means that Meta on the monthly is saying over the next few years, I could make my way down. If I'm not consolidative, but instead I'm corrective, then I can make my way down all the way to 392. I would say probably our 450 level. That would be a huge loss from even right here, not even the tippy top. That would be 35%. So that's what this signal says. What signal am I talking about? Weekly divergence is holding, triple divergence on the weekly. Now, you came to this flat area, so you have the opportunity to do what? You can pull down and not cross that center line, curl up, right? We can pull down into these areas. We can go to like 650, 630, and then curl up into positive territory by the end of the year, and that could be a good thing. But as it stands, you have weekly divergence. That's risky. You have daily divergences up here towards the top that told you that the weekly can curl down. Notice there's a signal for it. You actually got a slight lower high. The cool part with this is you have a 2-hour divergence there as well. So literally everything that we talk about in the course down there, the full technical analysis course, is right here for Meta. And I should have more time for Patreon to actually go through these type of things during market hours. So we'll see if I'm able to make that time for you. But wanted to give you a good discussion on Meta. It looks like a weekly pullback is more so what you're leaning towards right now. I'm going to keep that zone. I think that zone's pretty good. If not that one, then probably 575 for Meta. Hopefully that's helpful for you. We see that Microsoft on the daily. Man, if you're ever looking like, hey, does that look like strength? Not really. You're looking kind of wedged in here. Looking kind of wedged in here, right? We see that this could be, breaking to the downside soon. Could we make a divergence? Yeah. Or could this be the first drop to get us down to 460? Maybe you might even see Microsoft come all the way down to 430. Now you've heard me say that. Some people heard me say that way back in the like about I would say like 3 weeks ago. I was kept talking about this 460 to 430 area. I am still leaning towards that, and I don't think we're going to make divergence right here. I think we're going to see a vomit. If we scale up, that's fine, but I think that it would more likely we make those divergences potentially towards December at this point. We'll have to see. For Microsoft, though, we see that the weekly pullback is the play, right? I like to talk about what I think and things like that, but let's talk very simply. Hey, when the weekly does what? When the weekly curls back up, is that positive or negative? That's positive. So if you just see a little A, B into C, and then you curl up into positive territory, you see that on the MACD. Yeah, it's a good thing. It means we can probably ride that wave for a few weeks and look for bullish setups, right? If you're a shorter term trader, you see a weekly chart curl up on a stock like Microsoft, you just go, okay, we can see a weekly curl up. We have positivity. We have weekly momentum. So I just look for 2-hour pullbacks and I play to the upside for Microsoft. Same thing could be said about Google. Google is not really saying the daily's in trouble. This thing has seen some good news. So you can always get a mean retracement. It might need to make daily divergence first. So if the daily MACD turns up, positivity continues. If the weekly turns down, then you're going through that weekly pullback, and you'd watch out for daily divergence first as far as Google goes. Now, I do have things up for AMC. I did take a look at a few things for AMC. The big thing here for me is look at the weekly so close to the center line, and that's the big deal here. Right around here, we were like, hey, we're getting close to that center line. Then you see this hiccup where you go, oh no, are we going to flush here for a month? Nope, we turn around, and that's a big deal. So you not only have the potential divergences across right here between this low and this low, but now you actually have a potential higher low put in, which means the next move would take you potentially positive. You could test that high, go make a new one. That's crazy to me. I actually really like this signal. Now, the only thing that's backing me off from this is the shorter time frames. We discussed GME, I believe in a previous video this past week, how GME was very likely with the 2-hour signals. I apologize for saying it, but I keep it real on this channel. GME was overall showing 2-hour signals. Every time we've seen those signals, we've gotten a daily pullback. And I was the one to say it. I know it makes people upset. I don't want GME to go down either. I hold on to the stock. But that being said, I have to tell it how it is. And now GME's down 6% and people are pulling their hair out. And I'm like, well, the signal was there. So if you're pulling your hair out, don't risk as much money. AMC, though, is in the same boat. If the daily curls down, then we might need to retest these lows. Not really leaning towards that at this point. I would like to see this thing scale up, and I can't lean towards it because we don't have confirmation below our moving averages. So it's curled up into positive territory. So this could be a big moment for AMC. As far as GME goes, we were talking about the daily pullback, right? Why were we talking about the daily pull? I'll show you just in case. I'll show you the 2-hour divergence here is just dramatic, guys. It's so dramatic that we had to point it out. And we were just like, watch out because these things happen. No GME people react. What you need here is the squeeze. What you need here is to violate this divergence and not confirm it. Instead, you confirm it, which tells you a daily pullback is highly probable, and you even get confirmation for the daily pullback. So what can happen here? A little bounce, little head and shoulders, right? Then we go down and fill this gap towards 2350. That is the most probable thing. Hey, if it turns up, if the 2-hour can turn up, it's still close to that center line. We might go over this a little bit more throughout the week. But as far as it goes for GME on the weekly scale, you see what? Well, the weekly's turned up here. Now, this is not necessarily the best sign either. You have weekly divergence. So I think that if this is going to happen, you probably want it to happen like now, because if this starts to violate here, this is not a general area where weeklies make divergence. They make it a little bit lower. You can see an example. The last time we got a pop off, there was weekly divergence. If you notice, it actually confirmed at 1650. So if you're watching weekly charts in 2024, you could have caught that huge move to the upside if you just looked at weekly charts. Weekly is turned up by the center line. That is a good thing, but it is very likely if this crosses down to make new lows, to actually test into lower levels and make a divergence down towards, I would say, 1250. So I'm not leaning towards that. I want to be very clear. Right now, the signals are suggesting, hey, the weekly is curled up by the center line. It just tried to make somewhat of a higher low. That's a good thing. We need to see positivity. DJT, I think, is the other interesting one. You have these funky signals in here. You almost want to call them divergences, but they're not. They're more higher lows. The daily scale is what I thought was really interesting, especially towards the end of the week. Now, this isn't a great confirmation, but you do have a decent amount here of divergence. Okay, now you have a mixture of divergence and higher lows. You can see we're higher low in a little bit. We have divergence kind of from back here, right? So you have a bunch of stuff. But the good confirmation, we got good confirmation right here. I know it's only 0.81, but that is a confirmation from the RSI, not only the signal line, but also the center line, and not only the divergence is confirming, but they're confirming so close to that center line. This says that something very unexpected, some kind of expansion type move can happen here for DJT. I'm not going to call out that it's going to mega squeeze, but we have seen a few squeezes on some things that we have paid attention to that we haven't mentioned on this channel. I'm not acting like we've mentioned that. But for the most part, DJT is a very interesting one to me. And I really like the fact that these divergences look so clean. So I think it's a fun one as of right now. Really, guys, with today's video, I wanted to get into a bunch of stocks. So I hope that you were able to find some beneficial things for your trading. Maybe it convinces you, hey, maybe I do want to join Patreon and get some weekly moves and try to trade some of those stocks that we went through. Maybe it just helps you out with the position that you're in right now. I just hope it overall helps in some way. That is the overall goal for this channel. So thank you so much. And if it was helpful, please subscribe so you can go into the shorter time frames with us tomorrow. I would really appreciate it. And I'd love to see you there. Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend. Make sure to spend a ton of time with family. Go treat yourself. Do something nice for yourself. But other than that, I just hope you guys have a good one. And peace out.